You're listening to The Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of The Practical Wealth Show. And I am excited to talk to Nick Raithel. What we're going to do, Nick is the creator of the 7-Hour Book. And he's got a proven system that allows any business owner to get their own professionally published book within spending 7 hours, with only spending 7 hours. That's exciting, of their time on it. And with the 7-Hour Book, Nick is on a mission to help business owners finally get the recognition they deserve time and again. He's seen those nearly in every community who have incredible stories and they have knowledge to share. And so a book is the ultimate way to share their insights, and in doing so, create a great source of, get this, it's my favorite word, cash flow and business leads. Yet the issue always seems to be that no one has the time to, if you're like me, you're not going to sit down and type it out on your computer. So that's a problem. And so seeing this, Nick's combined advanced time management strategies that we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show with his own experiences in publishing and marketing. And the result was the 7-Hour Book. And it is a service that has been delighting clients ever since. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm looking forward to contributing.
Yes, I'm excited. This is a topic I'm very interested in. So everybody tells me, Curtis, when's the book coming out? I'm like, I don't know. So I need somebody. It's not going to, if it's got to be written, and it's not going to come out of me, because that's why I have a podcast and not a blog, because I can talk, but I don't like to write. And I think a lot of people are out there like me. So Nick, tell us about, I guess in a minute or two, rundown of just getting us up to where you are now and how you got into the book business.
Sure. So in terms of how I got into this, it really is the culmination of a long time fascination with books. Mm-hmm. And going back, I've always been fascinated not only as a reader, like many of your listeners are, reading books, but also with what a book can do. Because a book really is so much more than just the words, the feelings that it conjures up and makes you feel. A book really is someone taking their ideas and their experiences and their knowledge and using it to get a particular result. So as my own knowledge of marketing, coming out of the marketing advertising world, as that's evolved, I've gradually been able to find opportunities to not only work with books, but to use books as a tool to help various entrepreneurs, various business owners get the results that they want. And flash forward to today where I am, and I've taken time management, which has always been something I'm fascinated with, and been able to merge that with the long-time fascination with books to create this 7-Hour Book system.
Now, here's something there, guys. Is he found a problem and he solved it. All right. That's the key to all of this. But one of the things that we talked about, Nick, is that people think wealth, I want to create wealth, or I want wealth in terms of money, right? But there is your human capital or your value that actually creates wealth. And talk about that and how books help create the ladder, the money, but from a book.
Yeah, you're so right, Curtis, that wealth is not just money. We all think about it as money. We all go to the stores and we exchange money. We look at our bank accounts, and that's, of course, money in there, hopefully. And we think of that as wealth, but it is so much more than that. It's our experiences. There's a tried and true cliche you might have heard, which is that the wealthiest place in the world is the cemetery. It's the graveyard, because that's where you'll find people's potential. That's where you'll find all the stories and knowledge that they had that they took to the grave with them. And the point in that cliche, and coming around to what we're saying now, is that and I'm speaking to the listeners now, your experiences, your knowledge of a particular field or of a particular niche, those are quite valuable, because unlike just money, there are many more applications to your knowledge, your experiences, and just your general perspective, the way that you perceive the world. Those can be worked in many more combinations than just having money, going to the store, having money, buying a particular asset. You can do many more things. I mean, there's a reason as well that there's that book, Think and Grow Rich. the idea that you're going to think that your thoughts, which is relating back to the idea of that it's you, that it's coming from within you, and that's what makes you rich. So the bottom line is you're completely right, Curtis, in saying that it's not just about the money that you have. That alone does not constitute wealth. It's everything you have that oftentimes is unrealized, coming from your upbringing, coming from your knowledge on the job and a profession, and coming from other sources.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that one of the things that we talk about in the show is that your number one asset is you, right? There's no, like, when we talk about finances, I tell people, look, there's no financial advisor, product, stock, mutual fund that's going to take you to glory. You know, it's going to make you rich. You know, it's really your human capital combined with your relationship capital, being to get that message out there, and your unique abilities. So your experiences, the stuff you've dealt with. Because one of the things I remember Robert Kiyosaki talking about, that he used to go around, he was doing workshops, and so they were doing okay. He and his wife were conducting these workshops, but then he put it in a book. And really, he was trying to promote the game, right? But he wrote the game, the Rich Dad Poor Dad, was supposed to be a brochure for the book. But what happened was, Oprah, one of Oprah's producers, found the book, loved it. They confirmed that the story was true. He went on Oprah, and then the rest is history. In terms of all of the opportunities, he's been able to help more people because the book got out to more people than he could see individually, hearing that story. And this created a worldwide phenomenon. You may not create a worldwide phenomenon, but it will allow you to kind of get your message out to more people. And that creates opportunities to create other things. So we'll talk about in a second.
I would completely agree with that. Yeah. And I would add another example into the mix too, which is a person no one who listens to podcasts has probably ever heard of, by the name of Tim Ferriss. Imagine if Tim Ferriss had never written The 4-Hour Workweek, or he'd never written those other books. Today we know him as a podcaster, and he's done immensely well in that space. But if he hadn't written The 4-Hour Workweek, he would just be another egghead entrepreneur selling vitamin pills or whatever his supplements were out of the Bay Area and doing some traveling on the side. It completely transformed him. And I would also say, too, the idea that you'd mentioned, Curtis, of starting a worldwide phenomenon, that can be great. That can really be great. But at the same time, as you rightly put it, you don't have to necessarily do that. And in some cases, if you're writing a book for your business, you may not want to start a worldwide phenomenon. You may want to only get your book leaving a huge impact and making a huge impression on 1,000 or so key people, maybe only 100 key people. But those people are central in your market, and they are exactly your ideal client type. So in that case, you've hit just the right number of people.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that for a second. So your book as a part of a marketing system, and what can that do for you? Because I imagine that's kind of where you all help people with. Let's talk. Help people understand why the book is so powerful for that.
Yeah, I completely understand it. What I like to say, the way I like to describe it, is that it's the business card no one throws away. Because when you think about books, when was the last time, realistically, Curtis, that you threw a book away?
Much to my wife's horror, never. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly the way it is for, I would imagine, most of our listeners too. Mm-hmm. We just don't tend to throw books away. I mean, this is not Fahrenheit 451 where they're burning the books and they're just throwing them and no respect whatsoever. We tend to respect books, and because of that, if you have a book, and I'm not talking about a pamphlet here or something that's shoddily packaged. I'm talking about a legitimate, professionally published book. If you have one of those and you give that to someone, whether that's a prospect for your business, whether that's someone who you just want to gift along a book to, you think they benefit from it, whoever you're giving it to, they're probably not going to get rid of the book. Or if they do, they're just going to feel weird about it. I mean, if you've ever torn up a book or you've thrown it away maybe at the end of some time in schooling, there's sort of a weird feeling. It's like it doesn't feel good to tear a book apart and then put it in the trash can. And thinking about that then in the marketing context is the same way. People are going to have a harder time, even if it's just psychologically throwing out your book, which is going to help you in the long run with staying around, staying top of mind with them, and hopefully getting some business out of it.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about, so from the book, there's ways to, once you've got the book done, to create, outside of book sales, other cash flowing opportunities using the book. Can you describe some of the benefits that you've seen happen from, once you've helped people get a book out there?
Sure. I can point to two immediate ones. The first being speaking. A book is an excellent calling card for speaking. And if you structure yours the right way, your chapters or sections within the book could form the basis for one or more keynote speeches. An example that we didn't work on, but that I've seen recently where this was done, was there was I believe there was a former admiral, William McRaven, and he has a book that's based on a keynote he gave, a really great keynote at the University of Texas some years ago. And the book is called Make Your Bed. That's the name of it. Coming top of my mind here, Make Your Bed. And it's these 12 lessons that he learned from his time serving in the military. I believe during his career, he was active in the Iraq War with the Navy SEALs. And he actually, at one point, was in charge of Saddam Hussein when Saddam was in captivity. So this book then is 12 lessons, which were originally delivered in a keynote address. And judging from the popularity of the keynote, he was then able to produce a book from that. So that would be one angle, speaking and using the book not only to land yourself speaking gigs, but also to have material for when you do begin speaking. That would be one. And then the other one, which you mentioned, you alluded to, Curtis, was the idea of having products behind it, educational products specifically. You'd mentioned Kiyosaki and him creating Rich Dad, Poor Dad in conjunction with his cash flow board game. And the other way then that you might be able to use your book to create wealth would be if you have maybe or maybe not a board game, but some sort of educational program like a course, an online course that the book could then be a feeder for, or you have some other offering that the book then channels people toward. Not in the sense of being sleazy. You definitely want to put out a book that has value and does help people out, but your book could still be a lead magnet and a driver of people who enjoy your book, read it, see that you're offering a ton of value, that you've got a ton of great ideas, and they're so juiced up, they're so energized and inspired reading the book that they then recognize you provide value. And they're like, all right, let's see what else he has. And that leads them to your course.
Absolutely. And how do I know if I'm listening that, because a lot of people don't think they're interesting, special about me, everybody knows this, or that, there's a book in you that somebody will read, but and then you have the content to build this little empire with. Is there a way to think about that, or you help people, analyze that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways we could look at this. I think the first one is probably going to surprise a lot of people, but I think the first way to look at it is to question whether you really do need a book. And the reason I say that is because not everyone who's listening to this should necessarily do a book. It could be that your goals can be achieved without doing a book. I mean, I've certainly gotten on calls with people where they're thinking they need a book, and then we realize, oh, you just need to run some Facebook ads. Or they're thinking they need a book, and instead they should start a podcast. So really determine your specific goals up front and assess those goals versus what a book would do in helping you achieve them. So I think that that's important to say is the first way of looking at this. Now, assuming someone does come to the conclusion that they really do need a book, then addressing the rest of your question, Curtis, about feeling as though they really don't have anything to say, they're not that interesting. One of the ways you could tackle it would be to just look at proven book concepts. And there are, if you browse your local book rack or you look online on Amazon now, there are certain ideas that really never get old. And I can give you and your listeners some instances of those. The ideas being, for example, the angry insider.
Okay.
The person who is an expert in the field and they are mad as anything because they see all of the lies and all of the misinformation out there. And now they are on a mission to set the record straight, to tell you what the experts don't want you to know. And so there's that kind of book. I mean, it's been written by people in all sorts of industries, what your tax accountant doesn't want you to know, or what the experts in sports don't want you to know, or what X, insert whatever industry, whatever type of professional you can think of, don't want you to know. So that would be one immediate angle.
Wow, I think you just described me to a T. That's Curtis, the angry insider. Okay, keep going.
So there's that angle. There's also the person who's maybe a little bit less angry, but has life experiences and stories. And in this instance, maybe you're doing it not just for marketing, but doing it as kind of legacy. You want to leave something behind. Mm-hmm. So you're passing on your knowledge kind of as a gentle, seasoned veteran. I've seen it all, and here are some of the big takeaways from the industry. That angle, sort of the recollection angle, never gets old. And there are plenty of more angles beyond that, but those would be some tried and true ones that if you really are struggling for an idea, you could cling to and then develop out into your own. And then the last recommendation, I'm going kind of long on this, but the last recommendation I would give, if you really feel that you just don't have any good ideas, would be to get lazy and to go to your clients, go to your customers, go to the people who you work with right now, get them to provide the content, get them to provide the stories, and you make a storybook, make them look good, showcase them, celebrate them in the book, and there's your book right there. It's an anthology.
That's interesting. All right, that's some really good points. I hope you guys are taking notes as you hear this, because I have a page of notes already. And so one of the things I liked is that you come at it from a marketing perspective, because one of the things I told people, we're all in the marketing business, right? And so how does this fit into that? But do you need one as you look at, because, if you just, like, I like your marketing background, because if you're just talking to a person that wants to sell you on creating a book, and if that's the only tool you have, you see everything, and that's a nail, you see you're a hammer. You see your only tool you have is a hammer, you see everything as a nail, right? And so you take a more integrated approach to, it sounds like, as you're, interviewing people to see if they're a good fit for your process. Am I hearing that?
Yeah, you're definitely hearing that. And one more thing that we look at during the process, one of many things, is whether or not the person doesn't just need a little bit of a kick to help them on their way. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people out there, unfortunately, who just don't believe in themselves. And I know that it's kind of silly. We see all those movies where they're saying, just believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. But when it comes to books, I mean, people really can get overwhelmed by the thought of a book, and overwhelmed too, I think, in some cases, and I'm no psychologist here, but overwhelmed by past conditioning about writing. If someone, for example, did not do well when they were in elementary, middle, or even high school, memories of that could be clouding their judgment now when they think about their ability to write. They might have the unfortunate misbelief, limiting belief that they just can't write. In the same way that some of us might think that we're just, quote, bad at math. And so one of the things that I really enjoy when we're doing calls with people is when we're able to talk them through it and they realize, hey, you know what? I just need to sit down, block off, say, an hour, a couple times a week. I'm better at writing than I think. And I have what it takes already to go and do this book. Like, I love it when we have those conversations with people. So I think that that's important to have in this conversation right now, too.
Yeah. So now we've talked about the why and the benefits, and that you're capable and you have knowledge and that you should be sharing through a book. Let's spend a little bit of time and walk them through an overview of the process of how do you get this information out of them.
Sure. And as we begin this, I want to just be clear up front that ultimately it's about you doing the book, whether you're working with someone like myself and my team or doing it yourself. So I want to hopefully give these tips from the standpoint of a person doing their book, period, rather than necessarily working with us. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So to get started on that, I think right from the get-go, you want to think to yourself about what we were talking about a moment ago, which is why you want this. Start, as Simon Sinek in that book says, start with why. Why do you want to do this? Then within that, once you've got that worked out, that will begin leading you toward your topic, toward the length even, toward the people you want to potentially mention in the book. That's another good way to ensure your book gets out there, gets legs. If you bring in people who you mention, whether they're your clients and customers, as we said, incorporating their stories, bringing in vendors who you work with, who you want to give a shout out to, so then they'll be able to promote the book on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Who exactly you're going to bring into the book and what's going to be in the book. You do that once you've got your why. And then from there in the process, it's just a matter, I would say, of digging out interesting things, pulling it out of your head, and really taking that walk down memory lane to figure out specific examples or anecdotes you have, which can be used in conjunction with the principles or whatever your book's core concepts are going to be.
I like it. Yeah, so you have to think of, like, if you outline it, I think starting with why, because the topic, see, I always tell you in marketing, it's market, message, media, right? So the who that you're trying to reach and what the message is, the solution that you're providing for them. And then the media is the book. I drew a little triangle on my notes. I was thinking about that because I kind of break it down in different parts, but I think that's brilliant, because what I want to shift to then is, because one of the things I want to get this in there because I think this is helpful. We talked about lifestyle hacks, right? And so everybody's busy. My wife, for example, I'm in business. My wife's in business. We've got 2 teenagers and a 7-year-old, and it's like all over the place. So how do I get all this stuff done? Okay. Talk about how you help people kind of, one of your interests is time management. Because, our goal with the show is to help people live the best life they can right now. So I want you to enjoy yourself, be less stressed out, and get more done so you can make more money.
Sure. So the way that we specifically do it for people
mm-hmm.
is we have a system called the 7-Hour Book,
mm-hmm.
which allows people who are interested in this, if they decide that a book does make sense,
mm-hmm.
to then spend a total of 7 hours with us, 7 one-hour calls, where we pull the book out of their head, if you will, and assemble the book. And all they have to do is talk to us over the phone, and we create the book from there.
Wow.
Now, in terms of people who don't work with us, what could they do? A great place to start would be to purchase an egg timer, or maybe you already have one,
mm-hmm.
and commit to time blocking. It's a strategy discussed in Gary Keller's excellent book, The One Thing, where you set aside a specific block of time on a specific day or on specific days each week when you're going to focus on a particular activity. So if a book really is your one thing, this single thing that you're going to focus on for this quarter or even for this year, then you'll set aside time that is sacred, that doesn't get moved around, doesn't get influenced by anything, and that will be book time. So if, in your case, you're writing a book and you've made up your mind that Saturday mornings from, let's just say, 10 a.m. to noon are your book writing time.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon, you are going to work on the book. And maybe you're going to write a page, maybe it's going to be a chapter each week, whatever. You block off that time, and that time is yours. It doesn't get touched. It doesn't get moved for any reason. You unplug the phone. Maybe you cut off your Wi-Fi if you need to. Use any of a number of great apps to prevent yourself from being distracted by the internet. Whatever you need to do. But
mm-hmm.
you sit down in that chair and you commit to that time each and every week. So zooming out from that a little bit to the general principle, the principle is focus on the time and carve out specific blocks of time to get your book done that you don't sacrifice or you don't cut into or make excuses about for any reason. That time always happens. You were always there writing it, and that's how books get done.
That's cool. And so what you got to do is put it on your calendar, Google Calendar, wherever you're using in your planner, and then this is what you have to do, right? And because a lot of people say, well, they try to just fit it in, but you have to. What I try to do is make an appointment with myself. So whether it's going to the gym, whether it's date night, whatever, it goes on my calendar, and this is what I'm doing at this time.
Yeah, and I think it's important to not look at it in a militant way.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is don't look at it as this is what I have to do. I'm forced to do this. This has got to happen. Yes, it does have to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it absolutely needs to get done. But if you're mentally going into it with your teeth gritted and just forcing yourself into it, you might have a harder time than if you're relaxed, if you have maybe a pot of tea or coffee, whatever you drink, and you're looking at this as a fun time to get your thoughts out there. And also, if while you're doing it, you have your why or your whys, if there's more than one, mounted somewhere that you can see them. Maybe, I don't want to get too mystic here, but maybe have a vision board if you need one, or pictures to remind you constantly while you're sitting there at the computer of why you're doing this in the first place. If you can have that, then those 2 hours on a Saturday or the late nights, if you're working on this, writing your book after work, then that time period, whenever it is, becomes much easier to go through. And it could, who knows, it could be something that you actually enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant because it's you got to know why you want, again, back to Simon Sinek's book, start with why, but you want to, you look at Think and Grow Rich as think and grow rich, right? So you get what you focus on. So sometimes I'll find, if I sit there and I'll just get up early and clear my mind, whether I'm thinking about, all right, how do I come at this person's financials or whatever, if I'll just get myself in the space, I'll find, and I'm a morning person, so my head is clear in the morning, stuff starts flowing. And then once I get into it, it just starts pouring out of you. Once you get yourself, as Tony Robbins calls it, in state. That's a key thing. I think that's work. I found that worked for me.
Well, when you're in state like that, and I totally am with you in terms of what Tony's talking about there, because when we are in state, we can accomplish nearly anything. When you're in state, though, I think it's important to remember, as I heard, I believe it was Arnold Schwarzenegger in an interview he gave, talked about this. It's important to remember that there are times to think, and there are also times not to think. And the point was that when you, for example, you or anyone listening to this, gets up in the morning, if your plan is to exercise each morning, that's not the time to think. You don't want to be thinking, should I put my shoes on? Should I do this? How long should my workout be? I've got this coming up later in the day. Maybe I should put it off. Maybe I should actually eat first because then I'll perform better. You don't want to think about any of that. That would not be the time to think. Similarly, if you're trying to lose weight and you've just finished a meal and you still sort of feel hungry, and that's not the time to think either. That's not the time to think, well, maybe I'm not quite at my protein or calorie count for the week, and if I do just this much more, I'll be quite there. I can manage maybe a little bit more. Maybe I can still have that piece of cake or that ice cream or that yogurt or whatever it is. That's not the time to think either. So know when there are those moments to think and not to think. And relating that back to writing, the time to think for writing would be while you're actually doing it. The time not to think is before you go into the session. That's not the time to be thinking about the call you're going to do afterward, or about how you have to run, or about how uncomfortable the room's going to be. That's not the time to think. So know the difference between when you should be thinking and when you should not be thinking.
Nick, this has been great as we wind down. I know you've got a lot of stuff going on. Any closing thoughts? And then I want to tell them how to, if they are interested in exploring a book, how they can reach out to you.
Sure. I think as a closing thought, and a criminally underrated way of really getting more out of each day and more out of your life is drinking water. I'm a huge proponent, and I recommend anyone listening to this become one as well, of just drinking ample amounts of water. It's surprising what being well hydrated can do for you, whether that's improving your focus when you're sitting down to write, or making it so that you really don't have to eat nearly as much or think you need to eat as much during meals. Or, of course, in the athletic department, performing better when you go to the gym, when you do cardio activities, and also just being more awake during the day, not having to drink an extra cup of coffee or even coffee to begin with. So just stay hydrated.
Okay, that is a good tip. And I like coffee, so I know coffee dehydrates you, so you really need to drink even more water if you drink coffee. But that's a really good tip. Stay hydrated is what we're going to leave that with. So, Nick, how can they get a hold of you to find out more about the 7-hour book process?
They can go online to our website, contentcore.net, and that's spelled CONTENTCORPS.net, contentcore.net.
Perfect. Okay, and so we're going to put all of this in the show notes for you. Check out this site. It's got a really interesting site that describes the process, and you can actually, if you're so, if you'd like, they have a complimentary consultation that's built right into the site. So reach out, and if you're business owners running a nonprofit, guys, you've got a message out there, and you just have to get organized and think. Hey, other people are having these problems, and you might have a solution to that problem that would help somebody out there. And that's how you have to think about what you're doing. So you have to become, again, you have to share more, which is, when we talk about prosperity economics, what I teach is it's about thinking from a prosperous mindset and, and sharing more so than having a scarcity mindset. Oh, I don't want to tell anybody because it might steal my secret sauce. No, you have to share it. So Nick, listen, thank you. We are going to sign off. So folks, this was an awesome interview. So I want you all to get out here, get in touch and get your books out there. Thank you for listening to the another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So folks, get out there and make it a prosperous day. Listen, like, and share. And Nick, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me, Curtis. It's been great.
Yes, my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.